Well, hi, everyone, and welcome again to the Musical Innertube. I'm Don Rooney.
And I'm John Timpane. You know, Don's had quite a career in radio and television, where he's been an on-air personality, a news anchor, and even a TV weatherman.
And John has been a college professor. He's written several books, and he's been an editor and features writer at the Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper.
We first teamed up for a radio show in college. On one show, we introduced a soothing musical interlude.
But we stumbled, and it came out Musical Innertube.
And that became the name for this podcast, where we talk with interesting people about their interesting lives, difference makers who've really made a difference. Our guest today on the Musical Innertube is Art Caplan. He is the Doctors William F. and Virginia Connolly Mitty Professor of Bioethics at New York University Langone Medical Center and founding director of the Division of Medical Ethics. Welcome back to the Musical Innertube, Art.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Art, I was reading just this morning in a new release that you put out that you have some interesting ideas on the ethics of transplanting animal organs into humans. I guess this was triggered by transplanting, what was it, the pig liver or kidney into a human being not too long ago?
Right. So, as listeners will know, there is a huge shortage of human organs for transplant. As many as half the list this year will die because there's no liver, heart, kidney to give them. I should add, the shortage is even worse for children. It's partly because children don't ride motorcycles and children don't get in car accidents. Children, happily are not going to die in the numbers that adults do. So having donor opportunities for them is even rarer. And so it's very, very hard to see a pediatric heart transplant or pediatric liver transplant. So transplant surgeons have been thinking a long time, how do we do something about the shortage? And one thing we do is we yell at people listening to the show to sign a donor card, which I have done, yeah. And we should all do. Look, I helped create the system to distribute organs. And there are people who say to me, I'm not sure it's always fair. It has its issues, but it does a pretty good job. I mean, I helped design it, and then I became one of its biggest critics. But I'm absolutely urging everybody to sign a donor card. It's a good act to take. We do not shortcut in terms of pronouncing you dead if you have a card, which many people are fearful about. There are neurologists who come and test your heart and your brain to see if they've stopped, and they don't care one way or the other or know if you're going to be an organ donor. So don't worry about that. My wife used to worry about that, so I've had that concern raised in my own house, but you should not worry about that. You should be an organ donor. That said, tomorrow morning, next month, next year, we're probably not going to have enough organs to transplant. So some people have said maybe we can make mechanical organs. And if you guys think about it, we do have kidney dialysis. It's a machine. However, you have to keep plugging, sadly, the person into the machine through their blood system, and eventually it wears out. You can't live forever on kidney dialysis. So many of those people medically need a kidney transplant after, saying, 5-6 years of dialysis. Dialysis is not fun. 4 hours each visit. You're really tethered, if you will, to where the dialysis is. It's hard to travel. You have to restrict your diet. You feel tired because it doesn't really mimic what a natural organ would do. So even on dialysis, many people would wish they could come off to get a kidney transplant. If there were enough organs, many would choose to go get one. But as I keep saying, there aren't. So another idea that's been rattling around is using animals. And people have tried in the past. We're all old enough. Some may remember the baby Faye experiment, a baboon heart tried at
yeah.
You remember that, John? It was...
I do indeed. Yes, I do.
Yeah. And I wrote about it then, and I was saying it was not unethical to attempt to use a baboon organ in a younger child. But the challenge there was, even using a lot of drugs to prevent rejection, we couldn't do it, and the baby died. The drugs we have just weren't powerful enough to get a human body to accept a baboon organ, just biologically too different. The other problem was baboons are small. And so if you're trying to transplant adults, their organs are not big enough. So attention shifted from that point to animals like pigs, which are much bigger. When I'm in a bad mood, I'll sometimes say we switch to pigs because they're kind of like humans horizontal, but that may be extreme. But, they get a 350, 500-pound pig. You don't have these size problems with the organs. But it's even more distant biologically than a baboon. So how are we going to get the pig thing to work in a person? Well, another new technique appeared within the past few years, genetic engineering. It is possible now to breed a pig, knock out one gene so that its cells in the liver and the kidney, they don't have the same immunity, if you will.
Well, I read somewhere where it's fooling the body into thinking that the pig organ is a human organ.
And the way you fool it is you shut off the pig's immune system. We're just at pretty simplistic, in my view, genetic engineering. Sorry, genetic engineers, but it's just knocking out a gene that sets off the immune system. Anyway, so now you think maybe this will work. And I knew we were thinking about this at NYU, and some other places were as well. And I went to our transplant guys. I said, look, before we stick this thing in a human, maybe we should try it on a dead body. And they said, what are you talking about? In organ donation, if you, me, anybody was going to be an organ donor, we keep your body on machines after your death, probably 24 hours, 36 hours, to let the family of the person who died gather before we shut everything off. They say goodbye. They don't have to meet in the morgue. They meet in the hospital room. It's gentler on them. So we do prolong some organ function after death just to get organ donation done. And by the way, we would do it if somebody said we need an autopsy because maybe somebody got murdered or something. We're not going to just shut everything off before people come in and do their goodbyes. If that's true, then we've got 36, 48 hours to play with here, which is part of what we routinely do anyway. And I think rather than risk, say, John's life in putting the first pig, genetically engineered pig part into him, let's see if it'll work in this newly dead body where we're maintaining artificially blood flow and respiration with machines. But we could see if it got rejected immediately or if it makes urine in the case of this is a pig kidney. Slowly, the transplant team came around. And so we put in a bunch of, sorry to give you a lecture on this, but just very quickly, what we did was I said, look, we're only going to use somebody who's got an organ donor card. We're not going to just grab somebody and say they're going to be the subject in this new kind of an experiment. And then only if their family says this is what they would want to do, only if we knew they wanted to be an organ donor, but they couldn't. In the case of this person that we studied, they were ineligible because they had cancer. But maybe they'd want to contribute. Maybe they'd want to help to transplant advancing. If their family agreed, they had said they wanted to be an organ donor, and we ruled them out as someone who could be an organ donor, then ethically, maybe we could set this model up and get a family to agree, and that's what happened.
So the family would have to sign off on it before you could do anything.
Correct. And they have to be approached, get the thing explained to them. What are we trying to do? We're trying to learn whether pig someday might be a source of organs. They're not today. This was the first genetically engineered pig part. So it's a baby step toward getting there, but an important step. But they need to get it. They need to understand what we're talking about here.
Do you look forward to those organ donation cards maybe having a second box to tick, like I agree that if, my life functions are lost, I can be used for experimental transplant?
Absolutely, yes. The other thing all of us could do, it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes people donate their bodies to medical schools or dental schools or nursing schools, actually, for study that students learn on them. And then that's a checkbox to get to John's point. You have to say, additionally, I want to do this. But it has been done. And some of those bodies are used in research. believe it or not. Sometimes in things like car safety, they use a cadaver to see what an accident will do if you wear a seatbelt and so forth, without getting too macabre about the whole thing. So in any event, yes. One other thing, I was comfortable with the 48 hour to 72 hours. I'm not sure I'd be comfortable going much longer, because I think you got to let the family come to an acceptance of death, start the funerals, trigger their wills or whatever they're going to do. You know, this idea of sort of setting this model up and you'd be on the machines for 2 months, that makes me nervous. I'm not in that camp.
How long do you think it would take before things like pig organs in human beings becomes a fairly routine thing?
How long to get from this to a real first astronaut taking the organ as a real transplant? I think you got to do 4 or 5 more like this. Make sure that you're not getting instant rejection. Probably a few more cross-species ones, maybe pigs to sheep, that kind of thing. Some animal studies have been done. I'd like to see more. And then, maybe in a year and a half, you're going to try it.
I am curious, and I'm sure the answer is we don't know yet, but how is that pig part doing?
Well, it was removed after 56 hours. It did what it was supposed to do. It made urine. It didn't reject. To all appearances, it seemed fine. They will have to, put it under the microscope, see what's going on with the cells. That's probably happening now. If I was going to make one criticism of what we did, this all took place at my school, NYU, where we're doing a lot of transplants and sort of pushing out the envelope there. I wish we had not done it by press release. In other words, we announced this in the newspapers and the media. I like it better when somebody says, here's a paper, here's the data to answer John's question. How does the kidney look sort of under the microscope, which hadn't been done when we announced doing this. You don't win all your battles. They took the PR value.
We'll be talking COVID with Art in a minute or so, but first, this soothing musical Innertube. Here's the lovely and talented John Timpane with some information about Art's literary talents.
He also has written just a whole truckload of books, and 2 I want to mention because I read them and I liked them, have been Vaccination, Ethics, and Policy, which I learned an awful lot. Some of it was stuff I'd heard first from talking to Art, and so it did me good to see it in a book. The Ethics of Sport, so you see that ethics is something that Art does not just in biology and the sciences, but elsewhere, just talking about sport and ethics. And also, I recommend Getting to Good, Research Integrity in Biomedical Sciences. People who don't know much about this field will really learn an awful lot that's eye-opening.
Thanks, John. And now, with another question for Art, here's John.
We'd like to talk to you about the past week in COVID and all the novel things that are starting to happen or almost going to happen, including soon we'll have OKs for COVID shots 5 to 11. Can you talk about some of the special considerations that the FDA was faced with in making that decision?
That was a tough ethics issue because you had to recruit children to be in the experiment, right?
Right, exactly. Yes.
You had to go up to parents and say, hey, how'd you like me to give a half dose of this to your kids? Second issue, there are some kids out there still who can't really be vaccinated because they have immune diseases or cancer or some other problems. We shouldn't think that every kid is going to be eligible. So deciding what's a disqualifier. So I'll give this question to either you or Don for the third question. Are we going to mandate this shot like we do measles and hepatitis and polio and whatever? You know, that 14-shot kid schedule that you have to go to school.
Right.
Is this going to be part of that? And my view is it should be. As soon as the vaccine gets out there, I don't see any reason to worry about its safety or its efficacy. But I know there are plenty of parents who are going to say, I don't want any mandatory scheduling of that vaccine.
For all of the the parents that don't want their kids wearing masks in school, I'm sure that there's going to be an equal number of parents who are going to reject the vaccine.
I would agree. I mean, I think we can predict it. So if that happens, let's throw out two other interesting questions. One, can schools then say, the only way you're coming in here is to be vaccinated? Colleges have been saying it, right? Can't go back to school. You know, do we want to fight that fight or just sort of deal with parental resistance and not have to get into yet another round of vaccine wars? The other interesting issue, in a small way, but it's interesting, if I'm the pediatrician in my town of Ridgefield, Connecticut, or in Harrisburg or wherever, do I take patients who won't vaccinate their kids? Or do I say, look, you don't give your kid a COVID shot, A, it's dangerous for them to come in here, and B, I can't work with you. You're not following my advice.
You know, I'm thinking about schools, and I'm thinking that they can't really do what some companies are doing, which are we're doing sort of mandate light, where they say, we really want you to get the shot, but if you don't, you have to take daily tests. Yeah. And I can't think of a single school who's going to do daily tests for all their kids. You know, I mean, that's just.
We should have more testing. It's crazy. Why would we be sending our kids to school not knowing whether they're infected? We should have home test kits.
How quickly can industry pivot to start making half-dose vials as opposed to whole-dose vials? Will they be able to pivot that quickly?
Excellent question. Like that a lot. And the answer is not so quickly. You really do have to manufacture special shorter needles and different vials. In all honesty, I wouldn't impose a vaccine mandate for kids right now because I don't think you can roll it out. It's going to take another 6 months to get everything in place. Even if every parent said yes, I don't think we could do them in the short run. And by the way, this will come up overseas, right? We're always trying to have arguments about, should we vaccinate ourselves? Do we vaccinate Africa? Do we vaccinate wherever? Well, these manufacturing issues are huge, and we neglect them. We act as if, oh, well, the FDA approved it, and it'll be available tomorrow morning. It doesn't.
Yes, exactly. Well, see, that's what people think is that, you know, everybody's straining at the starting line. And as soon as, you know, the gun goes off, you know, the doors open and the horses charge. But that's not quite it. I mean, the irony is that it was the companies have been pressing for this for quite a while. I mean, it's, you know, I don't want to say it's all mercenary. Of course, it's not. You know, a lot of the people for drug companies really want to do good and do good for a lot of people. Of course, they do. But the reason I asked the question is, you know, I was thinking just the other day watching this on television, thinking, wow, do the companies have this in the pipeline? Do they have the shorter needles? Do they have the half doses? You know, and I thought, I don't see how that's possible.
Right. And you'd be right. You know, and making all that stuff is a pain in the neck, by the way, because you're making, think about it, like 20 million of these things. So the odds of your factory just going glitch-free, no problem, just keep churning them out is not high. Even in the best manufacturing place, Belgium, Germany, US, wherever, every time I take a look at this, there's a glitch. Something goes offline for a while until they figure it out. So it's not so easy to make this stuff.
Right, and the only one that's been approved so far, as I understand it, is Pfizer. We still don't have approval for Moderna or Johnson & Johnson for the kids.
Correct. That is correct. Although I think they'll come, but the likely choke point is the manufacturing of the whole mess of things for kids. I'm not so worried about safety. In fact, if you said to me, are these things ready to go right now, given what I've seen? Yes. I mean, you know, we want to have the proper sign-offs. It's kids. You got to ensure public trust. But there's nothing in the data that I get leaked to me or that somebody whispers to me that says this is not working or it's somehow not safe. Even in all honesty, giving it out to a schmillion adults probably gives you some confidence that you can, all you got to do is get the dose right and you'll be fine in kids. It's not changing the composition. But the manufacturing, boy, that is one big headache. And even, let me put it this way. The companies that have the vaccines, the Pfizer's, Moderna's, they won't start cutting deals with the manufacturers until they get approval.
Well, let's shift then to the adults. Vaccine mandates in places of business where people are getting fired for not getting the vaccine. I've seen everything from it's a great idea to President Biden is forcing you to fire your people.
Mm.
Where do we stand in that range?
Well, we've also
as
seen a couple of states ban mandates. Texas, Florida, a couple others have said you can't have employer mandates for vaccines. I'm going to go with that idea right away and say that is nonsense and will not stand a legal challenge, basically because in America, like it or not, most employers can fire you at will. If I decide to close down the transplant division at NYU, unless they have a contract or something, they're fired overnight, right? It's at will employment. In fact, it strikes me as sometimes funny that Republicans would pass laws saying what businesses can and can't do, since normally they're about as pro-business discretion as anybody, letting you do whatever you want for whatever reason. You can't discriminate. But if I wake up tomorrow and say, I got too many employees and I'm firing half of them, well, that's my right. And saying, I can't fire you because you won't vaccinate? Nah, that's a business privilege if they want to do that. They absolutely have the authority to do that. So I don't think those challenges will hold.
One of the places over the weekend that just went haywire in this regard were police departments, where many police unions are taking the stand that no one can force a police person to be vaccinated at all. There are some police departments that are more than 50% unvaccinated out there. That's probably one more reason to drive to the speed limit. But I guess, it's become a union thing, which is such it's such a strange fix, Art.
It's bizarre to me because these people face much greater risks every day at work. The risk from your COVID vaccine is like nothing. And these policemen and firemen sometimes fall in here too. They are sworn to try and serve the public. And so if you looked at the police codes of ethics, they don't say, well, I'll do what I want that's best for me. They say, I'm supposed to help my community. In fact, let me remind listeners, you know what's printed on all police cars on the side of them? Protect and serve. That would lead me to vaccinate immediately, right? Protect, serve.
Yes, sure.
Not, I'll do what I damn well please, sir. I'm going to make up my own rules. So I've tried to work with the police, and my argument is this. You're heroes, you face danger, you help the public. You should make vaccination part of that willingness to serve and protect us, and try to go in that way rather than just screeching at them that they're being silly or, have bad science. We'll see. I still think it's well within the authority of mayors and counties to mandate that the state police or local police get vaccinated. No doubt they can do and have that done. Question is, does it decimate the workforce too much? So experience so far that I've seen, when they've really gotten nasty about you get better vaccinated or you get fired, Seattle be an example, only about 1% of the people ultimately, and the police force ultimately said no.
I've also seen reports. Now we hear reports immediately when somebody mandates the vaccine for schools or towns or states. We'll see sheriffs and district attorneys saying, well, I'm not going to prosecute this if somebody doesn't. I've also seen the reverse, where there are states where the governor said no mandates, and the district attorney says, if my schools mandate it, I'm not going to take them to court for that either.
Yeah,
so going both ways on that sort of thing. It all just seems to me like at this point, refusing a vaccine is more of a you can't tell me what to do thing than anything else.
Well, the most powerful lever really is mandates through jobs, because you get fired. And so that's a serious enforcement, right? It's a real penalty. And I think you'll see that stick. I keep seeing big announcements from big businesses, Fortune 500 companies, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. So that really does push it through. mandating, telling the cops or the pizza parlor to enforce the mandate. You can't come in here unless you show me your vaccine card. I don't think many pizza guys are really in the business of being vaccine police, so I'm not expecting much there. And I get it. They try to be nice to the customers and so on. But the powerful agent is employee-based mandates. That's where you're going to see. I think you're going to see people canned if they don't do it. And my advice to business is make sure they have a route to come back, because after they're unemployed for a week or two and realize what's going on, I think some of them will reappear and say, change my mind.
The firing threat is really an incentive to get it done, isn't it? It's not that they really want to fire this person. It's that they,
Correct.
Yeah, it's really an incentive to just take care of it. Yeah, we still want you, but you have to do this.
The only exception to this seems to be Kyrie Irving, for those who don't know, to come to sports. God. This is the New York Nets guy who will not vaccinate, and he's told that he can't play for the Nets.
He has a problem in New York because that state is mandated, all the sports venues. And then when he travels, there are several cities that he would play in that he can't play in.
Right. Can't go
because
to
of the mandates.
There's a bunch
he can't play in Philly. He can't play in Philly. I was just in Philly, and Philly has a citywide mandate. You have to not only mask up if you're going indoors, you have to present vaccination records, which we did yesterday when we were in Philly, and everybody's going along with it. It's, people are, there's somebody standing at the door and looking at your papers. You go in. I mean, I was wondering, because Philly, people go their own way, as you know well, Don and Art, but Philly, it seems to be, at least in Center City, it seems to be people have gotten used to it.
Yeah, and I think it varies all over the place. San Francisco seems tough. He's not playing basketball there. They're really strictly enforcing being tough about it. Even in New York, depends where you go. I was saying some pizza parlors, they don't want to confront the customers kind of deal, but fancy restaurants, you don't have that card, you're not going in.
So I want to go ahead, Don. Yeah.
No, go ahead, John.
No, that's okay. I was going to talk about some nonsense or other. No, you have a question, please. Go ahead.
All right. Well, now that John's done with his nonsense, so to put this in perspective, with mandates in schools and in businesses, both for masks and vaccines, do you think we are headed toward a more compliant public and maybe a backing off of the pandemic situation?
Well, first of all, let me make it clear. I'm the person invited here to spout nonsense. I know that's that's my role.
I forgot. Yeah, thank you for that reminder, Art. Yeah.
But that said, it's going to be weird because the pandemic is starting to recede a little bit. It has come to us in waves. There are places like the UK where it looks like something is breaking out again. I saw also in some of the Baltic countries like Estonia, Lithuania, there was some return already, like another wave. So vaccination and masking and behaviors like that do seem linked up to the threat that people feel. If we got a lot of people vaccinated, kids came on, a significant number of them, a lot of employers got vaccination through, and people did get sick, so they have been exposed. The ability to tamp down the COVID will be, not insignificant. It's something. And then if it sort of quiets down for a while, as viruses do for reasons we don't understand, people may get lax about vaccination. But then if it comes back, boom, in January, February, we're in the middle of another wave, then people are going to start screeching, vaccinate. So what I'm saying in English is I do think better vaccination rates are slowing down COVID. I do actually think that's happening.
Yes, I saw that. It's such a weird, statistically right now, it's such a weird moment because, yes, I think most of the country is seeing, better rates. And yet we are averaging still about 1,600 deaths a day per 7 days, right? That's not small. That's quite, that's a lot of people are dying per day still.
Yeah. No, it's still, we're not over it. And long COVID, we don't really understand, so I don't want that. But my point being, you're right. We can't let our guard down yet. It's premature.
Another thing that is nice is that I think we're up to 59% of the entire population that has had at least one shot.
I don't know. There are probably 30 million under 11s or something. So let's say we got 10 million of them. And then you added in some more, a couple million more through mandates that are moving through places like the military, government contractors, and employers. We might bump up to 68, 69%. We could get there kind of grudgingly. And then there are going to be parts of the country where they're not there, and I think they're going to be beset with deaths.
And I just had my third dose, and my wife did too. So the mix and match issue, what can you tell me?
So Moderna and Pfizer are really 99.5% similar. I don't really think it matters which one you use as your third shot. They're basically the same platform. The big difference that people forget is when Moderna rolled out, it used a bigger dose than Pfizer did, and that's probably why it gave more protection. They both work very well, but I think you can probably mix and match there. The problem with the J&J vaccine, for those who got it, is the single shot didn't seem to give enough protection. I would say a second J&J shot is the way to go because there the mode of protection is different. You're not getting the same kind of a shot. You might use Moderna as your second shot for a J&J person. My bet is it's going to wear out again in 6 months because it's like getting the first shot of Moderna, if that makes sense. Here's something interesting. We got caught up in all this talk about boosters. And what you do is you say you need a booster when your immunity goes into decline. And when it gets too low, then you want it to come back up. But being an ethics guy, I love the fact that a decision about too low is not science, it's values. If you think 60% is too low, you start boosting. These vaccines started out, you guys remember, efficacy was 95%. Normally, you'd be running around doing cartwheels if you had a vaccine that hit 60. Partly what's going on is we're so pleased, if you will, with how well COVID vaccines work. Some critics say to me, well, if you need a third shot there, we told you it doesn't work. Weirdly, it works so well that we're freaking out that we better take a third shot to get back to 95%. Who has 95% in a pill or anything? You don't even see it half the time. I'll bet the highest efficacy shown in blood pressure medicines or whatever it is like 60%. I mean, we're really happy you get 60%. People assume they're taking the medicine, it's going to be 100%. It isn't. FDA approves stuff at those levels all the time. To see something go from 95, and I'm going to say it again, slip back to 60, it's just a funny value interpretation.
I've heard that COVID is going to slip into the realms of the flu for the future, that we will be taking COVID shots yearly the way we take flu shots. Is that the way it looks now?
Yeah, I think it will be. I think part of the reason is we have our friends in the South and the West who won't vaccinate, and they'll just be around spreading back COVID. Even if we got to, let's say, 90% with a 3-shot regimen, that means 10% of us still getting sick all the time. You're trying to encourage more continuous vaccination to keep things up at the top levels all the time. So I think we are going to see COVID with us at a controlled manner, kind of like the flu. It's kind of interesting. Most of the public doesn't see this, but because I hang around a big hospital at NYU, in flu season, the place is crazy overrun with flu patients, just like we were yelling about COVID patients overwhelming the hospital. Well, in January or February, if we went to the hospital, University of Pennsylvania, if we went to NYU, Columbia, the doctors are out of their minds. They're trying to figure out what to do with all these flu patients. So we accept that. We don't seem to say you better wear a mask in flu season, and we never mandated flu shots other than healthcare workers. So maybe we'll tolerate 20, 30,000 deaths a year from COVID. We do with the flu.
It doesn't even make the headlines either.
Right.
Art, it's been great to have you again. We got the extra added attraction of organ transplants.
Yeah, one of my wise guy friends, I'll end on this note, as we're speaking, we're getting closer to Halloween. He wanted to know if I was going to go out as a cadaver with a pig on it. So.
Hey, I want a picture of that costume if you use it, okay?
Yeah, I want to see if you get any candy, Art. That's what I want to see.
Scaring the youth of America down the streets.
Art Caplan, thanks once again. It's so stimulating to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Art.
Thank you for listening to the Musical Innertube.
You can get in touch with us by email. We're at musicalinnertube, all one word, @gmail.com.
You can follow us on Twitter at @MInnertube, capitalize the M and I.
Our webpage is musicalinnertube, that's musical spelled with 2 A's, .libsyn, that's spelled LIBSYN.com.
The Innertube is available on Amazon Music, Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio podcasts, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Like us, why don't you? And give us a good review on any of those platforms.
And as always, thanks to virtual band Car Radio Dog for our theme music.